All right, let's talk about mindfulness for kids. I mean, it is everywhere, right? You see it in schools, on apps. We're all told it can pretty much work miracles. But is all that hype getting a little ahead of the actual science?
I mean, think about it. Can you really teach a kid to just stop and think before they dive headfirst into that second cookie? Because that's really the core promise here, isn't it? It's all about self-regulation, that split-second pause before you grab a toy or blurt something out. For a little kid's brain, that's a monumental task. So can a few deep breaths actually make a difference? It's a fair question.
And it's not just a small trend. We're talking about a huge industry with schools all over the world jumping on board. So, you know what? Let's cut through the noise. Let's put the hype to one side and just look at the cold, hard data. We're going to dig into a massive scientific review to see what the evidence really says. Okay, so to really get what mindfulness is supposed to do, we first have to talk about a little something called executive function. The easiest way to think about it, it's like the brain's own personal air traffic control tower. It's the system that manages everything coming in and going out.
And it's really important to get this. Executive function, or EF for short, it's not just one thing. It's more like a whole suite of skills. It's that management team in the C-suite or the crew in that control tower that helps us plan, focus, remember what we're supposed to be doing, and somehow juggle all of it without dropping the ball.
And this is where it gets super interesting. This executive function thing basically breaks down into three key skills. First, you've got inhibitory control. That's your brain's don't touch muscle, right? It's what stops you from acting on every impulse. Then there's working memory. Think of these as the brain's sticky notes, where you hold on to info you need right now. And finally, cognitive flexibility. This is your go with the flow skill, the one that helps you pivot when things don't go according to plan. All three of these have to work together.
So now that we have that down, let's get to the big promise. The whole idea was that practicing mindfulness, paying attention to the here and now, could directly strengthen that entire air traffic control system in a kid's brain.
And for a while, the science seemed to be giving a big thumbs up. Back in 2019, a huge study of studies, what scientists call a meta-analysis, came out, and it basically said mindfulness was the most promising way to boost these exact skills in kids. And let me tell you, that finding made some serious waves.
But here's the cool thing about science, right? It never just stops. As mindfulness got more and more popular, a ton of new studies came out. So it was time for a check-in. Did that amazing initial promise actually hold up once we had more evidence to look at?
So, the very same research team decided to go back and do it all again. They launched an updated meta-analysis, pulling in all the new research that had been published since their first big review. It's kind of like a detective reopening a case file because a flood of new evidence just came in. The plot, as they say, thickens.
And what they found this time around? Well, it was definitely not what everyone was expecting. The story got a whole lot more complicated. And honestly, a lot more interesting.
Okay, buckle up. If there's one number you're going to take away from all this, this is it. The overall effect size, what scientists call G+, landed at 0.25. Now, in science speak, that's officially a small positive effect. But what does that mean in normal human language? It's a meh, a scientific shrug. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's certainly not the game changer everyone was hoping for.
And get this, even that tiny little benefit wasn't spread around evenly. When they looked at the specific skills, yeah, mindfulness did show a small real benefit for inhibitory control, that's our don't grab the cookie skill, and maybe a tiny little nudge for cognitive flexibility. But for working memory, the brain's sticky notes, they found absolutely no effect. None. Zilch. A big ol' zero.
But wait, because the biggest plot twist of this whole story is still coming. It turns out it's not just about if mindfulness works. It's about what you're comparing it to. And this, my friends, is where the hype really starts to unravel.
Because you have to ask the most important question in all of science. Compared to what? See, in any good study, you need a comparison group. And the type of comparison you use, well, it changes absolutely everything.
Okay, let me break it down with an analogy. Imagine you're testing new running shoes. A passive control is like comparing those fancy new shoes to, well, sitting on the couch. Of course, the shoes are going to look amazing, right? But an active control, that's the real test. That's comparing your shiny new shoes to your old, trusty pair of sneakers. You're comparing one real thing to another real thing. For these studies, an active control would be something like a relaxation class or another structured activity.
And this chart right here, this is the mic drop moment of the entire study. When the scientists looked at only the best studies, the ones that used an active control and compared mindfulness to another structured activity, the special cognitive benefit, it just disappeared. Poof, gone. The bars are the same height. What this tells us is that the small boost they saw before probably wasn't from mindfulness specifically. It might have just come from doing any kind of calming structured activity with a group.
All right, so let's put it all together. We've peeled back the layers of hype, we've looked at the best evidence we have, so what's the final verdict? Is mindfulness the brain-boosting miracle for kids that we thought it was? You know what? Let's just let the scientists who did the work have the final say here. In their own paper, they wrote that their results question the practical benefits of using these programs in schools, at least for the specific goal of enhancing executive function. That's a pretty clear, pretty direct takeaway, isn't it?
So, let's do a quick recap of the main points. First, the big hype about mindfulness being some kind of magic brain booster for kids. The latest, most rigorous evidence just doesn't back that up. Second, it does seem to help a little bit with self-control, but not with other key things like working memory. Third, and this is the big one, those small benefits aren't even unique to mindfulness. It seems like other structured activities can do the same job. And finally, look, this isn't about trashing mindfulness, it's just about setting realistic expectations for what it can actually do.
And that leaves us with one last really interesting question to chew on. If the science says mindfulness isn't some special brain hack, then what are we really doing when we ask kids to just sit and breathe? Maybe the real benefit isn't about rewiring their brains for better grades. Maybe it's about something much simpler. Just giving kids a quiet moment in a ridiculously busy world. A tool to feel a little bit calmer. A chance to just check in with themselves. Maybe the real magic isn't in the brain boost at all, but just in the breath.